Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question.
First of all, let me just say it is good to be with the National Association of Black Journalists, and I thank you for the work you do and that your members do every day.
You just heard the very beginning of former President Trump and Vice President Harris's responses to the first questions that they were asked by reporters from the National Association of Black Journalists. Harris spoke with the group today. The former president took questions back in July. Let's dig into this a bit further with Maura Gillespie and Hyma. Maura formerly served as an advisor to former Republican House Speaker John Boehner and former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Hyma formerly served as the director for the Office of the Democratic National Committee Chair. And thanks to both of you for being here. Obviously, kind of a different vibe for both Harris and Trump before NABJ. But Maura, I want to start with you because I know Republicans in particular have been very critical of the vice president for not doing enough interviews today. She sat down with 3 journalists from NABJ. Is this enough to kind of quell that criticism, and did she meet the mark?
I think that you're going to see that criticism continue because it is low-hanging fruit for a lot of Republicans to use that as a target about, she's been avoiding the press, she ran for X number of weeks and didn't talk to the press. But I think that her ability to hit back by doing well and not getting flustered will serve her well in the weeks leading up to November. But I don't think they're going to stop hearing that criticism from Republicans that she has largely avoided because of the fear of making a misstep, any major gaps because of her past previous experiences with the press and with doing one-on-one interviews. So while they have a reason to doubt her, I think thus far probably coming up a little empty there.
And Hyma, during this discussion today in Philadelphia, and our Ed O'Keefe was there and brought this up, the vice president also addressed the controversial situation right now in Springfield, Illinois. Let's take a listen to her response there.
It's a crying shame, literally, what's happening to those families, those children in that community, not to mention what is happening in terms of, look, you say you care about law enforcement resources being put into this because of these serious threats that are being issued against a community that is living a productive, good life before this happened.
And obviously, we know, and I just got back from Springfield, there have been a number of bomb threats there, all based on these debunked claims about Haitian migrants. I mean, in terms of Democrats, how are they trying to counter if you will, in terms of what we're hearing from the former president and J.D. Vance?
Yeah, Nicole, thank you for having me. And I just want to say that Jaron, Tonya, and Eugene did a great job today in Philadelphia. But I think the vice president is leading the messaging on this. You're going to hear this from a lot of Democrats. It's very, very unsafe for a lot of families for President Trump and J.D. Vance to talk about these sort of things. I mean, there was a Haitian immigrant on TV today that talked about that her kids could not go to school because they were so afraid to go to school. And that's something that we shouldn't have to talk about it in America. We've all been there. We've been through Jim Crow. We've been through Asian hate. We've been through Islamophobia and all these different things that are trying to divide us. And so I think the Democrats are going to try to talk about bringing us together while also talking about the rhetoric that they believe President Trump and J.D. Vance have perpetuated.
And Maura, I also want to ask you about this issue as well, because J.D. Vance also continues to double down on these false claims and did so again today at an event in Michigan. While I was in Ohio, had the opportunity to speak with Governor Mike DeWine one-on-one. Let's take a little bit of a listen to that conversation. Have you reached out directly to J.D. Vance about his comments?
No.
Do you intend to?
No.
Why not?
Well, look, I watched what he said. You've heard what I had to say about that.
So you're okay with him continuing to perpetuate these claims?
Look, I don't speak for him. He's got to run his own campaign. Donald Trump has to run his campaign. Vice President has to run her campaign. I'm not running for president. I'm governor of Ohio. I'm concerned about Springfield. I'm concerned about the state of Ohio.
So I'm curious what you make of his response, particularly because the governor has been very outspoken on this, calling these debunked claims garbage, yet at the same time, he's not going to tell J.D. Vance to stop making them.
I think it's honestly with Ohio, and he's walking a fine line, but he's also doing his job. He's looking out for the people of Springfield because those are his constituents as governor. And yes, J.D. Vance was the senator, or still is the senator, but J.D. Vance is on his own trajectory. And I think what the governor of Ohio is saying here is, I'm focused on what's happening in Springfield because it's not okay. And he has made that very clear. And the responsibility at the end of the day falls on J.D. Vance, and it falls on Donald Trump for continuing this conspiracy theory that is hurting a community of people who have not only have they added numbers to jobs there, but they've also added numbers to the churches. And if you know, for the MAGA far right wing who purports to be true Christians, shouldn't you be glad to see that this community, where a lot of the churches there, I mean, CBS did the story on it, where they saw numbers declining and couldn't get people to come back into the doors. And then the Haitian migrants came in and contribute to the churches. They're part of the community, and to demonize them in any way because of a story that he saw on the internet is just the dangerous slippery slope that we are seeing so many people fall down, and it's coming from hate. And at the end of the day, like, we as a society cannot operate if we continually come from hate and fear. It's destructive.
And Nicole, look, I'll add to this. If you've noticed a pattern here, so the governor of Georgia, governor of Texas, governor now of Ohio, Republican governors refuse to get behind some of these claims that have been made by President Trump and J.D. Vance. And so they're putting their own people in a place where they had to play political gymnastics. These governors want to care for their people, but Donald Trump and J.D. Vance keep putting crazy topics on the table.
I also want to talk to you, Hyma, about some new polls out today from USA Today and the Suffolk University that show Vice President Harris now leading the former president in the state of Pennsylvania, as well as two critical bellwether counties. It seems the common denominator there is potentially among female voters, but just want to get your take there on those new numbers, because we know that race is extremely tight.
Look, Nicole, we've talked about this before. Pennsylvania is a must-win state for Kamala Harris. And she knows that. If you recognize where she's been in Pennsylvania 12 times just this year. And so some of the counties that I really want to watch, you know, Allegheny County, Erie County, Chester County, Lehigh, Berks, those counties are going to really show where she stands and where Donald Trump stands. And so I do think that these numbers are real. I do think there are a lot of things that are happening in Pennsylvania and around the country and other states as well. I've traveled over the last few weeks. It's sort of like 2008 when you see non-traditional Democratic voters wearing Harris Walls merch. That camouflage hat is everywhere in Pennsylvania. And so I do think that she's taking it very seriously. These numbers are real, but we'll see how much they hold. But those bellwether counties are going to be really important for her.
All right, Hyma, Maura Gillespie, thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you, Nicole.